Episode 166 of the Interpretation Station is called to order. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just check that this is in fact episode 166. Oh yeah, it's okay. Episode is 166. Episode 166 of the Interpretation Station. Welcome, how are you all doing? I hope you are well, because I'm not. I'm, as they say, I am sick as a parrot. I've got the bubonic plague or something like that. I'm all pale. Maybe I shouldn't have worn a white t-shirt. It makes me look even whiter. Never mind. I'll be okay. I don't know if it's the flu or something. Still not ill enough to keep me away from making another episode of the Interpretation Station for the fans out there. However, I am going to be cheating a bit with today's episode, because I'm basically just going to be using the recording of a Sunday at 6 workshop that I filmed 2 or 3 weeks ago now. Just prior to the English Booth exam, the English Booth UN freelance exam. So it's obviously for my Russian-speaking viewers. And I will basically show you, we got through during the workshop, maybe through half of the text. And then, so what I'll do at the end is I will just do a run through of the remaining half that we didn't get through to give you the full experience. Now, we've got something a bit different for you today, okay? So it's not the usual political fare that we have from Russia, lots of stuff like disarmament, international security and all that. So this time I found a statement, we did a statement from the UNECE, the Economic Commission for Europe. Now it's quite hard often to find statements. The UNECE, often it's rare for them to provide statements. Much of what is said off the cuff. But anyway, so I have found this one from a year, from a year ago. It's to do, so this is all stuff to do with transport and logistics and trade. It's really a different set of vocabulary to what we're used to. And it's good, because if you come to Geneva to work, you're going to be doing this kind of stuff. And elsewhere, well, hell, this is the sort of stuff they're going to be using at the WTO, wherever it might be. A lot of it is relevant vocab. Now, the actual speaker, it's not even a delegation, a country delegation. The statement was delivered by, and I have to just read off the name of the organization. So in Russian it is the KSTP, which stands for Международный координационный совет по Trans-Eurasian Перевозкам. Okay, and in English, that is the International Coordinating Council on Trans-Eurasian Transportation. Just a couple of the key words for you before we start. By the way, as usual, I suggest that you, before you watch the rest of the episode, that you maybe try and practice the statement yourself. You'll find the transcript. You'll find the links to the transcript and audio in the description box. Hopefully you'll find the audio, actually, because I couldn't find the audio. So what I might have to do is get one of my colleagues to basically give me a read through of this so that you can use it to practice. And so a couple of the key words that you'll want to know. So this is перевозка, they say, this is for Trans-Eurasian Перевозкам. They use transportation in the title here. When we're talking about individual, I actually mentioned this during the workshop, for like a transportation from A to B. Often we'll say a carriage in English, okay? And перевозчик, we talk about carriers generally. You do hear other, certain speakers in the rooms talk about, transporters or a transportation. But the word I like I'm safe and most comfortable with is a carriage. Carriage for a perevozka, a carrier for a perevozchik. Now, the subdivision, as it were, we're going to be looking at, the subdivision of the UNECE, it's called the Inland Transport Committee. Okay, so that's Комитет по внутреннему транспорту. KVT. So that's an acronym you'll hear quite a lot when you're doing the UNECE. The KVT, the Inland Transport Committee, the ILC. And really, that's the main stuff. So as I say, just prepare yourself for a lot of trade-oriented, logistics-oriented vocabulary. Yeah, I think those are the key. I think that's the key vocabulary. And so without much further ado, we're going to watch the workshop. But just before you watch the workshop, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for me. And please do comment if you find some interesting solutions. If you can give me some interesting suggestions for vocabulary, maybe you disagree with me on certain things and something, please do put it in the comments. It's always good to try and spur a conversation. So yeah, come on, please make an ill man happy by just clicking the old subscribe button. Push me up to help get me up to 2,000. I think I'm sitting on about 1,916 at the moment. So come on, push me up to 2,000. Anyway, let's go get moving and see what we discussed during the workshop, and I'll see you around the other side. Okay.
All right. Let's get, so this is the one I found. This is very different than the ones I usually have. So I found something from the UNECE, the UN Economic Commission for Europe, which in Russian is known as the ECON. Okay. Again, so yeah, Diana, I know you're taking the French booth exam, aren't you, in a couple of weeks? So yes. They might, it's, why not? They might give you something from the ECE. The KVT is the Inland Transport Committee, the ITC. Okay. Комитет по внутреннему транспорту. And this is all, it's always usually stuff about logistics, trade. Yeah, it's interesting. It's different. It's different from the political sort of stuff that we usually do. Now, this guy is he's the Secretary General of the KSTP, and I've forgotten what that is. I have to look it up again. Did either of you look up what the KSTP was? It's something to do with Trans-Siberian Международный координационный совет по Trans-Eurasian перевозкам.
Trans-Eurasian.
Координационный совет по Trans-Eurasian перевозкам. Okay. Now, the one word that's important in this context that you run into a lot in the UNEC is this перевозка, and the best way of putting that into English. And generally, the word we use in English is a carriage. Like, it's to describe basically when a good is being transported from A to place B, and that's obviously a перевозка. And in English, the word we use at the UN is a carriage. Now, the funny thing is we wouldn't usually use that in normal everyday speech, a carriage. It's the journey that a product takes from A to B, but you can't really call it a journey because I guess that's in English, that's too open to sort of confusion. So it's called a carriage. So, and now I don't know what they call it in French. Un transport, maybe? Just a unit is maybe un transport. I'll have to ask.
But I actually think that перевозки is most like transports, no? Transportations or like transportation.
Transport, yeah. In English, we say it's a carriage. Anyway. Okay. So shall I start? So Diana, why don't you start? Into English or French, whatever works for you.
Okay, into English, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are marking not only 71st or 75th anniversary of the Committee of Domestic Transport.
Inland. So this is called the inland transport.
Yes, you said. Inland transport.
Here you need to be specific there.
Which is one of the most important industrial platforms and also of the center of international conventions in terms of inland transport.
Okay, so the one thing I'd say, you said industrial platforms. I would probably say an industry platform, because it's like a place where different industries, like a sectoral industry.
Otherwise, industrial is just
industrial has a slightly different connotation.
Production.
So we're marking the 75th anniversary. Yeah, anniversary is better than, I know sometimes you end up saying jubilee, but anniversary is better. So one of the most important industry platforms and centers of international conventions in the sphere of international transport, inland transport. Go on.
20 years ago, in 2002, we launched a joint project of European Economic Commission of
You can
the
go to just
UN.
ECE.
ECE, UNECE.
UNECE. Go on.
And Escato, is it also Escato?
No, it's not. So this is ESCAP in English, Asia Pacific. Ekonomiczna Komisja po Azji I Tichookeanskiego regionu. So ESCATO, again, that's something you'll hear in UN speak. So in English, it's ESCAP, and because you want to know the French, don't you?
Yes, but I don't know
Asia
either.
Pacific. It's probably the same in French, but you might run into it.
Okay, better learn. Dedicated to transportation links.
Yeah,
between
transport
Europe
links.
and Asia.
Yeah, Eurasia, say Eurasian transport links. Yeah, don't overthink it. Just Eurasian.
Okay.
Because the thing is called that's the Soviet, it's the Eurasian, whatever it was, the Eurasian Coordinating Council.
So a big amount of analytical and practical work has been made during this period, and today we are working on development of transportation link and easement or
for upraszczenie, your best bet. Streamlining is your best solution. Simplifying is also fine. Streamlining sounds very UN-ish.
Streamlining of crossing borders.
Border crossing, yes, streamlining border crossings.
Border crossing, and this work has been made by a whole range of working group, and this action is traditionally highly appraised by state members.
Okay, so I would say currently work to develop transport links and streamlining border crossings is being vedot. Okay, so you have to turn this into a passive, is being addressed by a whole series of working groups, and this activity has traditionally has traditionally been commended, praised, appreciated, commended, by member states. Member states, not states.
Sorry. So
do one more.
In my statement, I would like to dwell on details, or dwell on general trends, problem, issues, and challenges related to Trans-Eurasian transportation links and communications.
Ties, communications, links, connections. Again, if I was in a hurry, I would sort of be tempted to. Let me just find my pen here. I mean, that's the thing. If you're going very fast, you might just drop that. So I'd like to touch on. I'd like to dwell on general trends, problems, and challenges in the sphere of Trans-Eurasian transport ties and links. Let's say.
Oh, ties. Thank you for the words.
Okay, how about Larissa? You have a try for современные политические.
Today, the political and macroeconomic processes and different kind of crises, which are becoming more and more difficult to handle. And this indicates that there is a trend towards regional economic integration and the exploitation of transport and logistic corridors to conduct the most efficient economic policies and support economic growth will be preserved.
Okay, so what I would probably say here is современная, I'd probably say modern. Okay, I know you said today, but I'd keep that as an adjective. Modern or contemporary political and macroeconomic processes, as well as all kinds of crisis phenomena. Perhaps maybe you could just leave out phenomena, just crises, which are becoming increasingly difficult to confront alone, v одиночку. You said more and more difficult. Like maybe it sounds slightly better in English, saying more formal to say increasingly confront alone. Свидетельствует о том, что show that the trend towards regional economic integration, and I think you just say the utilization of transport logistic corridors to conduct or to implement the most effective economic policy and support economic growth. Будет сохраняться, I would probably just say will continue. Okay.
Will continue.
Will continue. Yeah. Again, I think if I was interpreting, I don't sort of feel that you have to, I mean, I know it's a slightly different, it's expressed slightly different in Russian, but in English, what sounds most natural is that this will continue, rather than having to get across the notion of will be preserved or maintained. I think you can just say continue. Okay. Do the next paragraph as well.
COVID-19 pandemic has significantly transformed the supply chain landscape.
Very good. Oh, that's really nice. For Cartino, the landscape, yes. And transformed to Preobrazila is also lovely.
Amidst border crossing restriction and the withdrawal of companies from the market.
This is good. This is good. Yeah.
Which couldn't survive in these conditions, the industry had to provide services that could rapidly in a reliable manner meet the needs of the economy and society.
Very good. That was really nice. The pandemic has again, if I was, the COVID-19 pandemic, you could probably shorten something there. The COVID pandemic, or just the pandemic, has significantly transformed. Do you even really need to say transform is quite a strong word in itself? So it has transformed the supply chain landscape. That's great for Cartina. Amidst, I never thought of условиях. That's an interesting. So I usually sort of just say in times of or in conditions of. That's
against
interesting.
The background,
I always against the backdrop of. I always find that's too many words against the back. Too many syllables. In light of, I say quite a lot. But it's interesting. Amidst, I might see how that works in future.
Can we change the two? Can we say like while the border crossing was limited and the companies were withdrawing from the market, unable to face the shock?
If you feel you've got enough time, if you've let the speaker go ahead and you feel you can do that, you can.
I guess it's more time because while, if I add while, then I could use verbs. While
if you put в условиях, you hear while, and then I'm hearing ограничения. So while restrictions on border crossings.
You mean I have to wait for пересечение границ?
Yeah, this is the thing. Okay. You see, as a native English, I'd just be going, what in times of, I would just sort of, just process it with the rush, close to the rush. In times of, in light of the restrictions on border crossings, withdrawal from the market of companies that couldn't withstand не выдержавших этого удара, didn't withstand this blow. The sector needs to provide services that can be swiftly and надежно, reliably. You can just say reliably as an adverb. That's fine. Can meet the обеспечить потребности. That's good, to meet the needs of the economy and society. Okay. My drawings. Let me scroll down. Okay, so I'll give it back to Diana then. Как мы знаем?
As we know, we managed to do so only together in close international cooperation.
I'd probably say full international cooperation, but yeah.
With full, okay. A large proliferation. No, it's maybe is it a negative word?
No, not necessarily. I think here
a broad proliferation of new Eurasian container services.
I would probably just have said spread, but I think proliferation is all right. Yeah.
And because the simple words don't sound particularly as complicated ones.
Yeah, that sometimes happens, isn't it?
That's because of French.
Yeah.
Spread doesn't exist in French. Proliferation, yes.
Right.
So the problem of new Eurasian container services allowed us not only to preserve the extent of carriages, but also increase them.
Yeah, the volume, maybe the best thing, the volume of carriages, the number. Yeah.
The amount, the volume of carriages, but also importantly increase them. In the same time, this growth was not only due to traditional market segments, but also thanks to new new
areas,
yeah, not direction, areas like postal carriages and e-commercial goods.
Yeah. So I would say here, let's see. As we all know, we were only able to do this. We were only able to do this together. The full international cooperation, the sort of broad spread of new Eurasian container services helped us not only maintain the number or the volume of carriages, but significantly increase them. Moreover, that growth was, you said, so thanks to, or here you could say in English, can be credited to, can be chalked up to. These are two good, again, synonyms that are worth credited sort of remembering. Credited to, when it's a good thing, okay? They'd be credited to, can be chalked up to traditional segments of the market, but also new areas such as Почтовые отправления. I actually looked up to see what the best way of, obviously they're talking about, DHL, FedEx, that sort of thing, I guess. Postal services, I guess. Postal services, right? And e-commerce goods, isn't it? E-commerce, right? That's the buzz expression. Not I was thinking earlier e-trade, but then just like 20 seconds ago, I thought to myself, no, it's actually the e-commerce is the buzz expression these days. Keep going.
Each year, e-commerce only increases and only accelerates, and restriction measures.
Accelerates, yeah. That's good.
Due to the restriction measures due to COVID-19 pandemic were only there to even more increase the process. So if I choose to increase it, accelerate, then
you have to say something different. Yeah, and the quarantine measures because of the pandemic have only speeded up that process, for example. But it's good. Набирает обороты, have picked up pace. Picked up the pace. Accelerated is actually very good. I think that's the best for набирать. Where does the stress go? Обороты or obor. How do I say it?
Обороты.
Обороты. Yeah, right. Keep going.
We are sure that with the change of client demand structure, the extension of cross-sectoral cooperation of transportation, customs, and postal administration.
Yeah, I think you can just say administration. Yeah, that's a sort of word. Yeah.
And companies will only increase. Reinforce.
Yeah, we'll get stronger. I mean, you say get strong. We're certain that with the changing structure of client demands, but also the expansion of cross-sectoral cooperation between transport, customs, and postal administration and companies will only get stronger. Do one more paragraph?
Yes, technologically new services, mostly used pre-pandemic innovation findings.
Developments,
findings.
maybe
Developments.
Advances, developments. Yeah.
And it goes first of all to in digitalization area.
Yeah, I'd say primarily in the sphere of IT. So technologically new services, for the most part, use pre-pandemic innovative advances, primarily in the sphere of IT.
But
would you say informatizacja? That's IT, right?
I said digitalization, but I mean, I think that you're right. It's more like IT services.
Because they talk about cyfrowizacja. I mean, cyfrowizacja is different.
Yeah, different.
I think if they'd wanted digitalization, they'd have said specifically cyfrowizacja, but I think this is to do with IT.
We need not forget that today digital technologies are what. Digital technologies not only changed the approaches to work.
The working methods
of enterprises and companies, but also the clients' desires and demands.
Okay, нужно сказать. I mean, when I hear that, that's not something to get tripped up over. Just we should point out that we should stress that today digital technologies have not only changed the working methods of, you often just say business. That more or less
business. Or maybe
sums up.
You mean
business?
Just business for both.
Of business. Yeah, but the preferences and requirements of потребители, what do you say for потребители?
I told clients, but it could
clients,
be customers.
Yeah, consumers.
But if consumers are in plural, why don't we put businesses like plural? Because businesses is really предприятие.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that in English you can use the concept. You can also say companies and enterprises if you want, but often in English we'll say business to cover all that sphere. It's just
I
an
love
alternative.
English for that reason, but I'm not able to do so yet. I'm learning from you.
Well, hopefully you learn a little bit.
No, thank you.
But yeah, потребители, I think they'd maybe want to hear consumers. I'm thinking.
Consumers.
Maybe. Okay, so should we go with Larissa?
If in the past it was sufficient for a customer to send and collect a shipment within the specific time framework for an agreed fee, today it's more. It is today for customers and businessmen are need to
let me help you here. Let me just help you up to this point. Okay, I would say yes, so while yesterday
it was
enough for the enough for the client to send and receive. That's already so your gruz shipment is. It took me a while to come up with that word when I was sort of preparing this morning, but shipment is the best word. Yeah, I think that's the most sort of the most versatile. Obviously, as interpreters, we always want to go for versatility. Because I was thinking consignment was another word. Cargo. I think shipment is the best thing. Сохранности, I guess, intact, right? It was enough to send and receive the shipment intact at a set time for a set fee, for a set price, by a certain deadline for an agreed. There's a few ways you can do that. I think in English we would probably say by a set time for a set price. Then today, the requirement. Which is as important for the here it probably is customer. I guess here it makes more sense than customer. I know I said consumer here because this was more general, but here obviously anyway, I mean all those words, I mean they are quite similar. It's as important for the customer. I'll let you carry on from there, Larissa.
Today customer and businesses are facing the need to keep track of the cargo, to keep track of the...
You can just say track. I mean, I think, yeah, the need to track the cargo, keep
they need
track
to
of
track the
Yeah.
cargo, the condition,
Uh-huh.
condition and stage.
Yeah, what stage it's at, where it is.
Stage,
You maybe just where it is, what state it's in, where it is.
And the situation with delay and the situation with delay and all the security requirements, and if all security requirements are fulfilled.
Okay, yeah, fulfilled, met. Now, I would probably say here, so I'll go from the start. So, while yesterday it was enough for the client to send and receive a shipment intact by a certain time for a set fee, then today the requirement, which is as important for the customer as for developing business as a whole, is the need to track the shipment, what state it's in, where it is, what technological and logistical stages any delays are occurring, and how the requirement is being met regarding its integrity. I think this goes back. I mean, here I said intact. Now, the thing is, intact is an adjective. There's not really a good noun, so that's why I'd say maybe it's just to make sure it comes. Basically, make sure it comes in one piece. It arrives in one piece is the idea. So meeting requirements for its integrity. Okay, keep
meeting requirement of integrity.
Yeah, product integrity.
Yeah, product integrity. Client needs statistical information about the shipping and handling.
Okay, go on.
These are shipping and handling process to optimize its transport and logistic processes.
Okay, I'd be quite specific. So the staff, I would just say to delivery. Перевозка, this is what we're talking about before. It's carriage. Перегрузка is, I think, is a specific. I think there's a thing called transshipment, which is a sort of specific logistical term, which I would be inclined to use. I would say in the process of delivery, carriage or transport, maybe a transshipment. It's basically being moved from one mode of from one vehicle to another. That's transshipment, I believe, to optimize its transport and logistical processes. Okay, I'll give it back to Diana. Соответственно, so we're here.
Accordingly, as in the known, is a famous triangle describing the effective functioning of transport corridor, services, time, rate, the role of service oriented on operator's capacity and client's demand only multiplies.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have to turn this around because kratno возрастает. You'd probably want to say, accordingly, in the sort of well-known triangle, describes the effectiveness of the functioning of a transport corridor, service, time, tariff. Kratno возрастает, you'd probably say, you want to say, there's a significant increase, I would say in English, of the role of service geared towards the capacities. Probably capacity is your safest word. Capacities of the operator and the needs of the client.
Do you agree with capacity?
You said capacity, yeah? Yeah, I like capacity. Yeah. I think that's better than possibility. I think in this context, and capacity is capacity, capability, something like that.
And knowing the geography of modern supply chains, it's obvious that the service must be digital.
Yeah, so short, I always just say in view of the geography. I would think it's like the size, isn't it? The scale, in view of the scale of the supply chain. It seems a bit slightly strange in English to say in view of the geography. I I think I've seen this in another language where they say when they say the geography, but really the best sort of solution is like the scale or the size. I don't think they're going to stop. You wouldn't be marked down as being wrong for saying geography, but I think just sometimes you might think about maybe scale or scope is a better words maybe.
But do you think it's only the extent, because geography?
Well, that's it. The extent again, exactly. That's the idea. Yeah. I mean, I think. I mean, yeah. I don't know. It's good just to keep those other words in mind. I think you could use any of them, but just sometimes geography in English that sounds a bit strange. That's all. So
yes, I agree. But if we want to express more than just extent, because sometimes geography is one thing is just Europe, but one other thing is Asia, or
maybe. I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think you could, but again, just keep those other two words as well in mind.
Yeah,
okay?
but it's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, do another paragraph.
With pleasure. So to be able to achieve a practical result, we need to examine and to analyze all the aspects of digital technologies, of the use of digital technologies in the corridors of planning, operational management, optimization of resources, and availability of the information in real time.
Yeah, to achieve the practical results, support to consider and analyze all aspects of the use of digital technologies. Just along corridors when it comes to planning, operational management, optimizing resources, accessibility of information in real time.
I think that natrasi is just for the reason of sophistication. It doesn't.
It's a high register, right? I mean, that's what I think. It's along corridors. I think that's basically what it means. Okay, got 3 minutes left. So I'm going to give it back to Larissa to finish off with a couple of paragraphs.
So we're
here. Здесь мы видим важную роль.
Here we see an important role for the UN Economic Commission for Europe.
By this time, just acronyms. Just go with the ECE. If you were doing this live,
ECE.
you would. You don't even need to say UN really. Often we just say ECE.
ECE. It's regional commissions and specialized.
Сестринских, ее сестринских,
Сестринских, maybe.
Keep it simple. Don't overthink it, Larissa.
It's neighboring.
Sister, just say it's sister.
Sister.
In English we talk about parent organizations, sister organizations. Yeah, we say that. Yeah.
Can we say like regional counterparts or maybe peers?
Like you could, but why make your life harder?
Okay.
So it's sister regional commissions and specialized agency for an open and equitable international dialogue on digitalization of transport.
That's interesting. You said for organizations, specialized agencies, because they do talk about the specialized agencies as opposed to specialized organizations. I think you're actually dead right. I think that was again, if you said specialized organizations, I don't think it'd be wrong, but the UN does specifically talk about its specialized agencies. I think in French they talk about entité spécialisée. So you want to say specialized. If you can use agencies, that will show that you have just that little added bit of knowledge. So yeah. What did you say for organizing open, equitable international?
For an open and equitable international dialogue on digitalization of transport.
Okay, and let's just do one last paragraph, Larissa.
Euro-Asian transport corridors, due to their multilateral nature. Due to their multilateral nature, have to provide a single digital service without without paper documents.
Yeah, so I would say Eurasian transport corridors, as a result of their multilateral nature, because of their multilateral nature, must provide the client a single digital service without the need to reformulate documents on a paper carrier. So that the idea of, every time it comes to a new border, they have to basically fill in the whole new form, stick it on the container. I think that's what they're getting at.
And obviously, the delaying, obviously, that delaying the dialogue over time will only bring to the situation where different participants of transportation will put in place different technological solution and interaction schemes.
Yes, I would say here it's clear that delaying dialogue or dragging out dialogue over time will only lead to certain participants перевозок in carriage. Certain carriers. Often they talk about carriers. Перевозчик, that's a word that is a carrier. Okay, that is what they'll often use. You could say, maybe here you could see that will only lead to certain carriers developing, like introducing, integrating, mainstreaming their own IT solutions and I like how you went for interaction, for взаимодействие, interaction, cooperation, their own sort of models of cooperation. And I think I am going to have to stop, unfortunately, ladies, at this point because it's past 8 o'clock, and I think my family wants to be able to, and needs want to come back into the dining room since I've sort of expelled them from the dining room. I think they're clamoring to be let back in. So I hope you've learned a couple of new things from today's workshop. Hope it's been useful.
Thank you, Roland. It's always welcome. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue then where we left off, which was here. So I've zoomed in a bit. I got a tip from one of the viewers. I think I got a tip from Arthur. Arthur, always a great source of tips. Said I should zoom in a bit more sometimes on the text that I use. So there you go. Hopefully you can see that a bit better now. Okay, возможно, какие-то из них будут утверждены. Okay, so possibly some of these will be approved. Утверждены, I tend to go with approve generally. Adopted, approved. I kind of think if they want to say, you never know with the Russians, right? If they want to say adopt, maybe they would have said приняты. Okay, so I tend to sort of утверждены, I tend to say approved, but I think either or could work. And moreover, here, I don't think these organizations are quite as such sticklers when it comes to monitoring the interpretation. But anyway, we'll say approved at national and regional levels, and accordingly, соответственно, at that stage, withdrawal from them will be either extremely painful or impossible in principle. Отказ. That's a word that bothers me because it's used it's used a lot, as you know it from Russian. But depending on the context, there's a lot of different ways it can best be rendered into English. So here, of course, this is referring back. I guess it's referring back to this, the схеме взаимодействия, the scheme. So withdrawal from those, what did we say? Withdrawal from those agreements, those arrangements, will be either very painful or impossible. So yeah, that отказ, sometimes it can be the abandonment, refusal, removal, Yeah, so you have to sort of, know which solution to use for which, depending. You have to adapt the solution you use depending on the context. В наихудшем scenario, okay, in the worst case scenario, this could lead to the образование, to the creation of new complexities and barriers instead of упрощения и гармонизации, instead of streamlining and harmonization. I think we talked earlier during the workshop for упрощение. Streamlining tends to be a good fit for упрощение. Maybe in the context, maybe facilitation could create new complexities and barriers instead of facilitation and harmonization. I think streamlining is best. Anyway. Из положительных уроков последнего времени. Now, to be honest, personally, when I hear like an is at the start of a sentence from Russian, my inclination is to skip it, is to drop it, and make that first noun, make it the subject of the sentence, and just adapt the sentence as I go along to make it so that it makes sense. I would here say, so положительных уроков, the best practice, lessons learnt in recent times in the sphere of Eurasian transport links can be seen in the transition from competition between different modes of transport towards cooperation. I would do something like that. Положительные уроки, yeah. It's best practice, isn't it? Lessons learned. I think positive lessons. I mean, okay, I guess you could say it like that. It doesn't sound very good English, though. So yeah, transport, связи, links, communications can be seen, or we see, in the transition from competition, конкуренция, различный вид, so вид транспорта, mode. Okay, that's a word that you're going to run into a lot when you're talking about this kind of thing, about transport, modes of transport. Okay, so they're moving from competition towards cooperation. Multimodality. So here we go. This is this modality, the idea of modes. Multimodality ensures the necessary flexibility in working with the client, accelerating movement of shipments. Maybe you could just say accelerating shipments. Perhaps you could leave the движение out if it was a fast speaker. Speeding up shipments. Optimal use of infrastructure capacities. I think that again. I think Diana talked about that for возможности earlier on in the text. That it's better than possibilities. In this case, optimal use of the capacities of infrastructure capacities. A key role in this process отводится. Again, you don't really have to render this like with a like for like English solution. I would just say a key role in this process is played by transport logistics centers or hubs. Hubs is a good word again when you're talking about transport. So I think either or could work here. If you were really wanting to impress, maybe you could call it a hub. Or they talk about terminals as well. You'll see they'll refer to that as terminalные комплексы. Let's call it a hub, which is fully consistent with the provisions of GA resolution of 2015, number 7197. Now again, this could be tricky, with this number. Maybe you weren't expecting it. My inclination perhaps would be to drop the UN when I was doing this, because we're already in a UN context in the whole thing. So, if you talk about the General Assembly, everyone knows it's going to be about the UN General Assembly. So the provisions of the UN General Assembly resolution. And, he's going to give out the full name here. And perhaps another inclination is, perhaps if I didn't catch this number, 7197, but let's say I missed it, you could probably just say, the GA resolution of 2015, and really no one would know the difference. Okay, you're going to give the guy's about to give the whole name of the resolution anyway. So that's again a little technique. If you miss the actual serial number, as it were, see if you can hang on to some other characteristic of that decision or resolution that could just give it a little bit more context. Here, I think giving the year would sound perfectly acceptable. Now, I haven't got in front of me what that resolution is. How would we paraphrase it? Let's see. Naputika towards ensuring всестороннего multilateral cooperation, interaction, cooperation between all modes of transport with a view to facilitating содействие. I do like facilitating for содействие. If you're a regular viewer, you'll know that for содействовать, I like to say facilitate, and for способствовать, I like to say contribute to. So with the goal of facilitating the creation of устойчивый, sustainable, multimodal transit corridors. Now let's have a look at what the actual wording is of that. It's interesting, sometimes because you run into the names of these resolutions a lot when you're working at the UN, and it's interesting just to see how the translators render these expressions like naputika and like в целях, whatever. So the actual name of the resolution is towards, so naputika, towards comprehensive cooperation. So they don't even include обеспечение. The Russians basically, I guess they throw that into the Russian because Russian language sort of requires a verb. Towards comprehensive cooperation among all modes of transport в целях содействия, for promoting sustainable multimodal transit corridors. Okay, so there you go. Sometimes, often when I hear of целях, I often find myself talking about with the goal of, but here in the original it's just for plain old for what was содействие? For promoting. Yeah, that's another good synonym for facilitating, promoting. Современные терминальные комплексы, so modern or contemporary terminal complexes, located both in seaports as well as in dry ports, or if you want to get really technical, in maritime ports, as well as in dry ports. Not only ensure swifter circulation of goods, turnover of goods. They not only ensure swifter turnover of goods, I would say is perhaps the best solution. I mean, obviously, I know in Russian there's the товарооборот, which I'm more used to seeing. I think this is pretty much the same thing. The idea of just, coming through, being processed. So these complexes not only ensure swifter turnover of goods, but positively impact on the economic development of regions, creating новые рабочие места, just new jobs. You don't have to do anything fancy with рабочие места, just creating new jobs. At the same time, it's important to ensure that they're mutual. At the same time, it's also important to ensure their mutual correspondence, which will help to make best use of transit and processing capacities of infrastructure. I think that's, if you're going to go word by word, that's perhaps the easiest way to do it. Just be careful here. I mean, this is the future, right? Что позволит. Someone in an exam, someone might be looking out for that just to see if you're spotting the future, which will enable or allow us to make best use of the transit and processing capacities of infrastructure. Therefore, we think that now what is particularly relevant, so when you сейчас особенно актуален, my approach when I hear that, when I hear immediately like the adjective at the start of the sentence or of a phrase, is to throw in that what is particularly relevant is dialogue on issues of best practice for осуществление евразийских перевозов, for implementing Eurasian carriages in the sphere of multimodality and logistics, or practice of implementing or carrying out Eurasian transports in the sphere of multimodality and logistics. Again, it's the kind of thing where you just want to find words that you're comfortable with, and carriage for me is what I'm most comfortable with. If the guy is following, I think if they hear the word carriage, they're fine with that. I would like to once again stress here the role of the working bodies of the UN system as the most effective platforms for organising substantive interregional dialogue. I think here, I don't think you need to say capable of organising. I think just the most effective platforms for organising предметно, I will almost always say substantive interregional dialogue, regardless of the membership of their participants in a given integrational association. Okay, so again, the Russians talk a lot about интеграционное объединение, and I usually render that as just the integration associations. Okay, it sounds clunky. So much of what is said in Russian can sound clunky going into English, but there's your job is really just to convey. There's not much more that you can do than just in this kind of context and convey it as it is. Don't try and add any frills. It's not a frilly statement. So just keep it basic. Stick to the basics. Okay. The global trend towards ecological transport systems, the attention granted to green technologies, or the attention paid, I suppose pay attention is the sort of classic collocation, confirms, but maybe underlines the vital significance, the exceptional significance of rail transport in ensuring the international supply chain. Here in guaranteeing the international supply chain. I mean, again, those are your two sort of standard go-tos, aren't they, for обеспечение? Guarantee and ensure or provide. I think here, ensure, provide. Supporting maybe would work here. Supporting the international supply chain. Колоссальный товарооборот, the vast turnover, or just here I think tavarooborot is the trade. I mean that's really what it is. The huge, maybe say something like the huge level of trade between the countries of the EU and the Asia Pacific region. В нынешних условиях. In this day and age, I do like my in this day and age. I know, I usually use that for современном мире, this day and age, but I think it would work here as well. So the vast level of trade between the countries of the EU and the Asia Pacific region in this day and age is increasingly thanks to inland transport. Okay, внутренний transport, so inland transport. It's worth pointing out, by the way, so this statement was actually delivered on last year between February the 22nd and February 24th, so I guess it was before the events in Ukraine started, so I guess the picture was a bit different back then, but anyway, the important thing here is that the vocab that he's using, all right? And обслуживать is increasingly, or I guess is served by internal inland transport. The vast level of trade between countries of the EU and the Asia Pacific region in this day and age, in current times is increasingly served by an inland transport. Maybe just served by would work here, just for obsluživается. Here there are no contradictions with our partners, be it moriakami I aviatorami. I guess seafarers is the word. Seafarers and aviation. If those two words didn't come to you in the moment, which would be understandable, you know, again, you have to sort of slightly paraphrase. You have to say sort of. You presumably recognise that moriakami is to do with the sea, right? So you'd say something like, "Here we see no contradiction with our partners at sea or in the air. Our shared goal," naša общая задача. I like to go with, you know, our shared. Our common goal, I prefer shared. Our shared goal is to actively follow trends, challenges, and needs, propose new solutions in the normative and technological spheres, and exchange best practice. One of the important formats of the ITC is the discussion forum on road safety. Okay, so безопасности, I mean, usually it's going to be security, right? Certainly the UN, you know, the Security Council, Совет Безопасности. But when you talk about transport, it's going to be road safety. And what's more, the Russian delegation, it tends to be one of their sort of pet themes at the UNECE, while they were still very active. I mean, they haven't been so active, to be honest, in the last year or so. But yeah, road safety was something they would always often focus on when these sort of events took place. They would often submit initiatives, resolutions on the issue of road safety. The discussion forum on road safety. Принимая важность, in view of the importance of issues of safety for the functioning of the Eurasian transport ties, I propose dedicating to this theme one of the upcoming meetings of the forum. Посвятить, I guess, yeah, devote, dedicating. Уважаемые коллеги, distinguished colleagues, or again, that's one of those expressions that if in the heat of battle, you know, you are struggling to keep it, you just drop it. Like I often suggest for just dropping Mr. President and so on, ladies and gentlemen. In synergy with the efforts of the regional commissions and the UN system organizations or agencies or entities. If you want to play safe, you know, I think we talked earlier, the specialized agencies. Maybe it's the agencies. If you want to just play safe, just say organizations. And the organizations of the UN system, which bring together governments, sector, government and non-governmental international organizations, we see this being the key to success. Yeah, I think that's how I'd say, you know, in synergizing the efforts of the regional commissions and the organizations of the UN system, which bring together governments, sector, government and non-governmental international organizations, we see as being the key to success. That's probably the best way to deal with that. KSTP, so whatever what do we say? What would you do, okay, if they say KSTP and you forget, Jesus, what was the name of the actual organization? You just have to remember it was a Soviet, right? The council, our council. Or our, if you can't remember if it was a council, because a coordinazione Soviet, but you just say, okay, our organization. If that happens, that does happen often. For example, I know it happens like at the Human Rights Council. You've got NGOs, for example. We've got really long, complicated names, for example, sometimes, and then they repeat the name, and you can't get it. You just have to say our organization. Okay, that's a shortcut. That's a good, effective way of doing it. Our organization, the members of which representatives of the public administration, Gasorganov, business and science, are also ready to вносить свой посильный вклад, to make our contribution to this work, to do our bit. Does that perhaps, for the Russian native speakers among, does that perhaps best convey the idea? I know it's like посильный вклад, do everything we can. It's the idea of, even if it's only a small amount, we're ready to do our bit in this work. I would probably say to make our contribution to this work. I thank you. So there you have it. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was a bit of a different text, as I say, to what we're used to. And it's always good to try something new. I hope you've learned maybe a few new words. There's certainly this idea of перевозки, especially if you come to work at the UN. That's going to be something that's very useful. I'd advise, if you get a contract at the UN, you've got Russian, this is a good episode to watch, right? Because and also with the freelancers, they often put freelancers into the UNECE. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Please do tell me in the comments if you've learned any new words, any new expressions, any new little tricks. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, share and subscribe. And all that remains to be said is that as I go back to try and heal my aching limbs and my runny nose, episode 166 of the Interpretation Station stands adjourned.
The train is now leaving the Interpretation Station. We hope you enjoyed your visit. Until next time, folks.